Welcome once again to Biblically Grounded. I am your host, Clayton Van Huss, and this is the podcast where we talk about the Bible, archaeology, apologetics, and the material culture of the biblical world. We are joined today by our friend Frankie Snyder. Frankie, we've talked to about Herod's floors and some of the interesting work that she's done there. But one of the interesting things about Frankie is that she is a small finds expert. Frankie, welcome to the program, and tell us what a small finds expert is.
Thank you for having me today. Small finds expert is somebody who deals with small things, like smaller than your fist, generally. The finding of small finds, the finding of little tiny things has really changed over the last 20 years with the use of wet sifting. Now, at all archaeological sites, when you dig up material, you dump a bucket onto a big wooden tray that has a wire mesh in the bottom of it. You shake it all out. Then you look through the material that's on top for what you can see. With wet sifting, then you take that material that was left on the top, you put it onto another tray, you spray it with a garden hose. It's not high technology. You spray it with a garden hose, you wash off all the dirt, and you can see lots of things that you missed because before they were covered with dirt. So then you're finding little tiny things. It's coins and beads, document seals, bullae, arrowheads, all these smaller objects that when they're coated with dirt, you just don't see them. So now that more and more archaeological sites are using wet sifting, we're finding more and more of these tiny little objects that tell us so much about the culture of the ancient peoples.
So this is an exciting thing, and like you said, it's low technology. It's a garden hose and a mesh.
A garden hose.
Yeah, but it's so cool to do. I enjoy wet sifting. In fact, we talked a little bit about the sifting projects going on in Israel right now, and you got your start with the Temple Mount sifting project. And when I was first tourist in Israel, I got to play with the City of David sifting project, working on the Way of Ascent, the road that goes from the Pool of Siloam up to the Temple Mount. And it's fascinating, just the bits and pieces that you pull out that you would never see until you wash them. Tell us a little bit about how that has affected, you've mentioned a little bit, but how has that affected our finds? Is it really helping us that much? Is it worth doing to find more objects? And what do those objects do for us?
Main advantages is finding things like these document seals, which have people's names on them, or finding the bullae. A bulla is a wad of clay on which you stamped. You took your stamp and you made a seal, much like a red wax seal is on documents today. We're finding the seals themselves, and then the sealings, the little clay image of that name, and we're finding all these different names that we find right there in the Bible. So part of the program here today, I'm going to be showing you some of these where we have names, we have the seals of these biblical characters, and it just makes them so much more real to us because you say, whoa, this was something that was his, there's his name. He was using this to authenticate a document with his own seal and his own name.
Now that is interesting because the Bible does talk about seals quite a bit from the beginning to the end. But also, you mentioned that we find not just the seals, but we find the bits that were stamped. Why? Why are we? Because when we think about stamping an envelope, we watch movies like about knights and castles, and they have a piece of wax and they stamp that, and that stuff just doesn't last. How are we finding these things left over from the time of the Bible?
Some of these seals were actually caught in fires, and what the fire did was bake the clay. And it baked it so it was good and hard and 2,000, 3,000 years later, it still exists and the name is still there right on it. So it's this wet sifting has helped us, especially with the bulla, because a bulla is water clay, and a water clay covered with more dirt and clay looks like a bigger wad of nothing. And it's not until you remove that outer layer of crud that you find what is underneath, which is somebody's name, a picture, or a geometric design on it. Tells us about the people many, many years ago.
Oh wow. Okay, so this is fascinating, and we do have things that link us right to the Bible, right to biblical characters. Frankie, can you teach us today about the seals and the bullae and all of the different identifying document stamps that you've had experience with?
Sure. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation here. Let's do this one and share, and let me enlarge the screen. There it goes. So we're going to look today at ancient identification seals. And on the screen here, you'll see lots of different kinds. We're going to start though with the story of Judah, Yehuda, and Tamar. This is in the book of Genesis. When Judah saw Tamar, who was sitting at the entrance to the town of Anaim, he took her for a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, "Here, let me sleep with you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And Tamar said, "What will you pay me for sleeping with me?" And Judah said, "I'll send a kid from my flock." But she said, "You must leave a pledge until you have sent it." And he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your seal, cord, and your staff, which you carry." So he gave them to her, and he slept with her, and she conceived by him. So what did Judah give to Tamar? A seal, a cord, and a staff. No, not that kind of seal. What he gave her was his stone identification seal. This particular one right here was found in the debris from the Temple Mount. So here's the seal itself. The bottom has a picture on it. And over here on the left, we have a piece of what's called phemo clay, where we've taken the seal, stamped it on the clay to show you what the clay would look like when this was used to authenticate a document, just like wax seals are used today. So you would sign a document to indicate your ownership. So this seal was your ID, it was your signature, it was your logo. Now, some of them don't have your own name on them, but when we think of logos today, there's 7 different logos on the screen right now. Not one of them say a word on them, but you know exactly what company each one belongs to, and you know a product they're selling. So people knew the seals of the people who lived in their regional area. So first we have this one up here. We're going to talk about 4 different kinds of seals. The first one are conical seals. They're sort of shaped in a cone. They're not quite, but they're still called conical seals. They'll have a hole through it at the top. This is where you put it on a string around your neck. This is one from in Israel someplace in the Levant area. And it looks like a big gazelle on it, then a smaller animal down at the bottom. Here is the seal. And here is a piece of a phemo clay with a seal stamped in it. There is a hole that runs this way through the seal to tie it around someone's neck. Here's another one from Mesopotamia. You can see it has some kind of a gazelle type animal with really fancy antlers on it. Again, here's the seal. Here's a piece of clay where the seal has been stamped on so that you can see it the right way around once it's stamped. This one is more triangular, but it's got a hole going through it again to hang it around someone's neck. Here's a couple of seals that we found at Tel Shiloh in 2023. The first one is made out of stone, and Jeff Smith found this one. And here's Jeff holding his seal, so you can get an idea of the size of it. You can see it has a hole through it, and his has sort of a crosshatch design on the bottom of it. This one on the right is one that I personally found in wet sifting. It's made out of clay, and on the bottom, it has something that looks like a pepperoni pizza. in 8 slices with a piece of pepperoni on each one. So I call that my pepperoni pizza one. However, when I found it, I realized it looked very much like one that I personally had found back in 2012 on the Temple Mount. So I read a picture of that one to show you how similar they are, each with sort of an 8-pointed star, and each has 8 dots. In the case of the Tel Shiloh one, which I found at wet-sifting at Tel Shiloh, each dot is inside each of the pepperoni, the pizza slices. And on this one, the 8 dots are to the outside. And this one I found wet-sifting at Emblems Park, which is where the city of David did all the sifting. And this one actually came out of the Temple Mount material there.
Yeah, and this is okay. So I'm going to interrupt you here. This is an interesting thing. You found 2 with similar designs, and this is a known design. We see this in museum pieces, in seals, and in jewelry and things like that. So how does that help us to find similar items?
I actually, when I did the research on this, I found several different ones that are very similar. No 2 are exactly alike, but this idea of like an 8-pointed star or a 6-pointed star and then placing dots around certain places does show up on several different seals. Like I said, none of them were exactly alike, but they were similar. But it's a simple geometric design that someone could create with a stick and a pointed object. So you have a pointed stick, you can draw the star and then place the points into in this case is into clay. This one is a very soft stone. It's made out of chalk. So here they had to carve it out because it was a chalk one. And this one's clay, this one's chalk. So a bulla is the seal impression itself. What you stamp with is the seal. What you stamp on is a sealing, or we call a bulla, a lump of clay. Come back in a few minutes and look at this one and see exactly whose that one is. This seal was found in wet-sifting at Emblems Park in the Temple Mount material. This one was found at Emblems Park in the Ophel material. I worked there at Emblems for 13 years. The last year I was in Israel was during COVID, and we had to shut down for a while. So I was not there during that last year, but they were found at the same location. But this material from the Ophel, which is the area just to the south of the southern wall of the Temple Mount. And we'll come back to whose seal that is in a few minutes. Now, how these seals were used. If you were writing a document, after you would write it, you'd roll it up, you'd tie strings around the document, and then put a wad of clay on it and stamp it with your seal. These are all original documents, still rolled, still sealed. This one was found in Samaria. It comes from 375 BC. This one is in Egypt. This one was rolled, folded, then the string tied around, and the wads of clay put on there. These documents have never been opened. They've been left just as they are, as an example of a rolled and sealed document. Now, these documents were written either on parchment or papyrus. Parchment is animal-based paper, where you take an animal skin, usually from a sheep or goat, stretch it out really thin, and make paper out of it. This is what Torah scrolls are written on. They're written on parchment or animal-based paper. We also have plant-based paper, which is papyrus, where you take reeds of papyrus and you slice off very thin layers of the reeds, put some of them vertically, put some of them horizontally, smash them down until they dry, and you get this paper. Okay, so you'll find both of these kind of materials used as ancient documents. Back to our seals. The second type of seal is a cylinder seal. This is a carving on a little cylinder. There's a hole running down through the middle of it, so you can again tie it around your neck. But when you take the seal and you roll it along, it makes a repeated picture that continues to go round and round and round. So some of these are from Iraq, some from Mesopotamia. Even these are lots of little tiny cylinder seals. Sometimes cylinder seals were used to decorate clay pots. Like when this pot was being made, the owner of the seal would say, here, you're making some pots for me. I want you to put my seal on them so people know this is my pot. So they took a cylinder seal, rolled it along the edge, And it made a geometric design on it, or a pictorial design on the pot. And everybody knows, oh, this Joe belongs to Joe Blow because this is his seal. This is a seal that we actually found at Tel Shiloh in wet sifting. And I think Steve Rudd was the one that found this. It is a piece of clay that was cut out of a broken pot. When the pot broke, somebody said, well, here, I'm going to cut out a circle here to use as a pot stopper. And you know all about these pot stoppers. Okay. So
Yes.
it still has the seal on it, or the impression of the seal still left on there from 1,000 to 2,000 years ago. And this was found in wet sifting at Tel Shiloh.
Wow, that is fascinating to see. So they're not just sealing documents, they're personalizing objects like clay
Yes.
pots.
Yes. That's another thing they did with these. A third type of seal is a scarab. Now, a scarab is a beetle bug from down in Egypt, and they would make these seals in the shape of a beetle bug. So on top, it looks like the beetle. From the side, it looks like a beetle. On the bottom, the flat bottom, is where somebody would put their markings and say, this is the seal that I use to seal my documents. This is one we found at Hirabena during our dig there. We were not using wet sifting. This was found just by somebody who was digging in the dirt there. This one on the right is one from Tel Shiloh. And again, this is one I personally found. This is my one scarab I finally found. Found it at Tel Shiloh. Again, it's made like a beetle bug, and it has this design on the bottom of it. But it was through wet sifting that we were able to find this little seal right here. The scarabs were usually attached to finger rings. That's why there was this little divot at the top and the bottom. The person would wear the ring with the beetle side up, and when they wanted to use it as a document, take the ring off, flip the beetle over to the other side, and then use it to stamp a document or a design to show that something personally belonged to you. And this has on it Amun-Ra, the Egyptian sun god, on the backside of this one. The Egyptian scarabs can range for ones that are this size. This one over here on the right is more like about that big. It's quite large. It's got an entire story written on it, not just someone's name on the backside of it. The fourth kind of seal is an intaglio seal. It's where you take a very beautiful stone, you carve a picture in it, and this is going to become the center of a ring. Both of these were found at the city of David at the Emmexarine Park. I think both of these came off of the Pilgrimage Road that you talked about. I think these were part of the Step Street excavations. This is Apollo. And this one on the right is my absolute favorite one that we ever found there. It is this beautiful bird sitting on a branch with flowers above it. So this would have been set into a ring. But this is out of amethyst, and it's only about this big. It's a little tiny guy.
Yeah, and that was my question. It was purple. So these are not just carved out of like soapstone or what, they can be carved out of all sorts of things.
These are semi-precious stones. Yes. Okay. Here's another one from the city of David. And I remember when this one was found. I remember that we found this one on the Step Street, and this is on carnelian, which again is a semi-precious stone with this little fox on it, or a fox, or some kind of a dog type image, but probably a fox that is on there. Here's one that was found at Masada, where the intaglio was still set in the ring. And this is a gold ring that was found there. It probably belonged to a Roman soldier. But again, it is out of carnelian, a semi-precious stone. Now we're going to look at a couple stories in the Bible where we actually talk about somebody using somebody's signet ring and stamping a document. The first one is in the book of Esther, where we see the evil Haman using King Ahasuerus' seal, where the king gave his signet ring to Haman. He was the foe of the Jews, and Haman issued orders to kill the Jews in the city. The orders were issued in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet. Accordingly, written instructions were dispatched to destroy, massacre, and exterminate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, all in a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. Later on in the same story, we have Mordecai reversing that, not reversing the edict, but allowing the Jews to defend themselves. And he again used the seal of King Ahasuerus. And the king told him, you may write with regard to the Jews as you see fit to defend yourself. Write in the king's name and seal it with the king's signet. For any edict that has been in the king's name and sealed with his signet cannot be revoked. Another story that you may not be as familiar with has to do with Jezebel using King Ahab's seal. Naboth was a gentleman who had a vineyard that King Ahab wanted, and Naboth had told him, no, I'm not selling it to you. So Jezebel hatched a plan. So Jezebel wrote letters in Ahab's name, and she sealed them with his seal and sent the letters to the elders and nobles who lived in the town Naboth. And the letters she wrote as follows: proclaim a fast and seat Naboth at the front of the assembly, and send 2 scoundrels opposite him and let them testify against him. You revealed God and the king, and then take him out and stone him, which is what happened. And when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, Ahab set out to the vineyard and he took up for himself.
Yes,
so these
that's
are three different stories of the use of a seal to authorize a document, to authorize an action.
yeah.
that
And this
have been
is
recorded.
all found in the Bible.
Yes.
So, okay, I hope I'm not jumping ahead here. So you talk about Jezebel using Ahab's seal. And you
Yes.
probably know where I'm going with this. So we have a seal in the Israel Museum. It's beautiful. It's carved out of, I believe, an opal, and there's a lot of controversy around it because there are those who claim that it is the seal of Jezebel herself. Have you had any chance to study that seal?
I have not. We do rarely find ones with women's names on them. And in the ones I show you in a few minutes, I'll show you one that has a woman's name. Usually you find a man's name on them.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to move over to the bullae, which are the seal impressions. Now, bulla is a Latin word, and the plural is bullae. So here's a bunch of bullae from the city of David, and each of these have people's names on them. This word bulla has actually been preserved in Hebrew because a postage stamp is called a bull. You want to mail a letter, you go buy a bull, put it on. That's how it's been preserved there. Okay. These bullae can have either pictures on them, they could have geometric designs on them, or they could have somebody's name. Now, all of these are from the city of David. We found all of them in wet-sifting at Mitzrayim. I do not know who found this one or which particular dig this was from. I actually found this one. This is a geometric design one. It was from the Step Street area or the Pilgrimage Road area. And then I also found this one in Beit Shalem, the Beit Shalem area. Now, when it has someone's name on it, it comes in a certain format, usually. It'll have the person's name at the top. The double line in the middle means son of, and then the father's name will be below it. So in this one, Mishulam ben Mikniyahu is the name. So that means this seal belongs to Mishulam, the son of Mikniyahu. And that's the standard format. Now, all of these are written with this ancient Hebrew alphabet. You'll see on here 3 different alphabets. Here's the modern Hebrew, the square script. This is what we see everything written in Hebrew today. Here is the ancient Hebrew. It was used during the First Temple period, otherwise known as the Iron Age. It was used for inscriptions, on seals, on coins, and these are the seals. This is the kind of lettering that you're going to see. In addition, we have a much earlier script. That's the one on the far left of each of these columns. And the Mount Ebal curse tablet was written with these letters. Now, I will say that I was the one who found the Mount Ebal curse tablet again in wet
Yes.
sifting
So
there at the Mount Ebal project.
can we take just a minute to
Sure.
ask you about that? So the Mount Ebal curse tablet, I'd like I'd like you to tell our listeners who are not familiar with this. Many are. So you found, and you personally tell us the story about finding this artifact and what it is held to be, and maybe some of the controversy surrounding it.
I'll try to keep it very short. Okay. This is a very small tablet. It is only about 1 inch square. And around here someplace, I have a little tiny bottle of it, which I've not been able to find since I got back from my trip to Israel. It's laying around my desk here someplace. And it is made with lead that was written on and then folded over. This was found in the material from Mount Ebal, from material that was dug out of the center of an altar that goes back to the time of Joshua. And this material was originally excavated out by Adam Zertal. And we went in there a few years ago. We took the material that he had excavated. We did not dig any more holes. We just took his piles of excavated material and we wet sifted them. And in that material, we found this little tiny tablet. And on it is an inscription written in this very, very early script, like over here on the very far left. It's written in this very ancient script. And it even has God's name on it. It's a three-letter name of God, Yud He Vav. And if you'll hold up your mug that you have right there, you actually have it. You have to get in front of the screen. You got to move it close to your face so they can see
Get
it.
over to you here.
There is the Yud He Vav. That is exactly what we found on the screen. Is one of the words is written there twice on the inscription, and it basically says that you will be cursed by this God Yud He Vav if you do not keep the covenant that you agree to keep with him. And we think this was from the covenant renewal ceremony that Joshua held there on Mount Ebal when the Israelites first got into the promised land. So very old.
Yes, that is a fascinating story, and it's very interesting to watch that develop. So if you keep up with biblical archaeology today, you're probably well aware of the story. Now you've heard from the lady herself who made the discovery.
Now back to this little bullet, and it turns out this is King Hezekiah's seal. The name is written here, the Hezekiah, belonging to Hezekiah. And then this doesn't have a line, but it has this beetle bug in the middle of it, the son of Ahaz, and then Melech Yehuda. Ahaz, he's the son of Ahaz, the king of Judah. And we read in 2 Kings, and in the 3rd year of King Josiah, son of Elah of Israel, Hezekiah, the son of King Ahaz of Judah, became the king. This one was from the material in the Ophel, the area just south of the south wall of the Temple Mount, but we found it at during the sifting at Terrain Park where I was working. Here's one that is from Megiddo. Now, this is a reversed replica of the original seal that was found. That they did this so that you could read it. On a seal, the person who made it had to write the words backwards. So when they were impressed in the clay, then they came out right side, going in the right direction. So seals are written backwards, but when they made a replica of this, they wrote it forward so that you could read it. The lamed at the beginning, belonging to Shema, and then it says Ha'oved, the servant of Jeroboam. So Shema, the servant of Jeroboam, had the seal. Here's one we found in the city of David with a woman's name on it. I said, very rarely do we find a woman's name. The picture on this one, here's the actual seal, so you can see it in somebody's hand, how small it is. It was found in the Givati parking lot dig, that's just part of the city of David. And here's a reverse picture. Le Eliana, daughter of God. So her father's name is here, but it's a woman's seal, a rare one. One place of the city of David, they found 51 bullae all in the same room. And they think it's a document storage room that went up in flames during the destruction of the city in 586. And the fire burnt the seals, baked the seals, and preserved them. So we have all this huge group of seals. And we're going to
So
look
I'm
specifically at this one. Yeah,
okay. I can't wait to see that one, but I have a question.
sure.
So a lot of these seals that we see in this image appear to
Yes.
be the back sides of them.
Oh,
Is that
yes. We'll
is
do
that
it.
from
We'll do the
the
front sides and we'll do the back sides.
okay,
Yes.
I will let you do that.
Okay, we're gonna do the front sides and the back sides. We're gonna start with some front sides. We'll take this one over here first. And it is Gemariah ben Shaphan. It is the scribe of King Joachim. And in Jeremiah, we said, and it was then that Baruch in the chamber of Gemariah, son of Shaphan. Here it is, Gemariah ben Shaphan, near the gateway of the house of the Lord, read the words of Jeremiah from the scroll. So here's a person's name from Jeremiah in the book of Jeremiah, that we read his name. And here is his own personal seal stamped into a baked piece of clay. Another one from the book of Jeremiah. We have four people, Shephatiah, son of Matan, Gedaliah, son of Pashur, Ukal, son of Shelemiah, and Pashur, the son of Malchiah, heard about King Jeremiah, and they threw him into the pit. And here are the seals of two of those four people who wanted Jeremiah thrown into the pit. Here are their own seals. The Ukal, the son of Shemaliah, that's a little bit harder to read, but this one, Gedaliah, the son of Pashur, or here's the R at the end, son of Pashur. This one is very easy to read. And I remember when we found this one at the Sifting Project, the young girl who found it was one of our girls who was doing her national service. Instead of going to the army, she was doing national service there at the park. And I remember when she found this one. And this one belongs to Natan Melech, a servant of the king. So here's the L belonging to Natan Melech, and then the line, Oved, the servant of there's the hay for the, Melech, servant of the king. Perfectly readable. You can still read it today, 3,000 years old. And we see his name in the book of 2 Kings. This one was found by the girl who worked in the office. One day she wasn't too busy in there, and it was a while before the next group came. So she came out, grabbed a bucket, threw it on the tray, and she finds the infamous Bethlehem bulla. That is a fiscal bulla with the first mention of the name of Bethlehem. On the top, it says Beshevet in the seventh month. This is the baked. Here's the B, the T, L, H, M, Bethlehem. And then again, we have something about Melech, ML. This is the K sound here on it. So it was just a part of one. But I remember the day that she found it, she didn't have anything in the office. So she came out, she sifted one bucket and landed a treasure. Now we'll talk about the backs. Yes, the backs of these. Sometimes you will see the parchment. Remember, I showed you that parchment paper that was made from reeds. All of the documents here were done on parchment. Every one of them has this parchment line. Then we have the strings that were tied around the document. And then it took on the water clay took on that shape of the paper as well as the seal on it. Here's one that has fabric on the back of it. Now, the absolute biggest, best one I have ever seen with this is the one that we found last summer at Tel Shiloh. Jennifer, Wydell, how do you pronounce the last name?
Yeah, Jennifer Wendell, Brian
Wendell,
Wendell's wife.
Jennifer
Yes.
Wendell, working right next to me. She dumped on a tray of material, dumped on a bucket of material onto the tray, and she finds something that's about this big. I mean, it's a big wad. Now, most of these bullae are like this big. It was a piece about this big. Turned it over, and we had a picture stamped on the front. We turned it over on the back, and you could see fabric, and you could see the strings. And we're going, whoa, this is huge. This is a huge bulla. And then she looks on the tray, and she finds another chunk that connects with this thing. So the two of them together are like this big. It is the biggest bulla I have ever seen. And it evidently was on some kind of a jar or jug that had fabric wrapped up around the top of it, string wrapped around it, and then they sealed this jug of whatever and stamped this picture on it that belongs to somebody. And the back of it shows the fabric and the strings. And that was at Tel Shiloh last summer in wet sifting. And Jennifer got that one.
Good for her. That is an exciting find.
Yeah, very exciting find. Sometimes the handles of storage jars would be stamped with seals right up here at the top. We have a lot of them that say Lamelech, belonging to the king. These were jars of food that was being put aside by King Hezekiah because the Assyrians were getting ready to attack. So he created 4 storage cities to store food for the military to use, for the soldiers to use. So each of them has either a sun disk or a beetle on it. And then at the bottom, it has the name of one of 4 cities. And those 4 cities are, here it says Lamelech, belonging to the king, or the king has set this aside, at Ziph, at Sokah, at Hebron, H-B-R-N. Hebron was one of the places. And another one, MMST, looks like Mamshit. It's not the city of Mamshit, which is a city in Israel. It's another city that had a similar spelling pronounced differently. We don't really know the name of it. We know we symbolize it as MMST. That was the 4th storage city. And all these were set aside by the king to store food for, in time of war when the Assyrians attacked. Other ones, we get a rosette seal. I actually found a rosette seal in the Ophel material. This one is not mine, it's somebody else's. We'll have somebody else find this one. This is a really neat one. It's the Jerusalem seal. It's been found several different places. You can't see the letters very well here, but here's what it actually looks like. It has a 5-pointed star, and in the 5 spaces, Yud, Resh, Shin, Lamed, Men, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. So it has the city name of Jerusalem stamped inside of there. We also have seals on jugs of goods that were being transported, especially from the island of Rhodes, where we find wine and other goods coming in from the island of Rhodes. And theirs are in Greek because that was a Greek island. Here's one we have from Shiloh again. And this was a scarab that was stamped into the handle of a jug to show ownership of this jug. So these seals were used to sign documents, for authorization, to authenticate a document, indicate ownership, decoration, like we saw in those big pots, to consign goods for royal use, like like King Hezekiah was setting aside all those goods with the Lamelech seals. Consignment of goods for trade, like the ones from Rhodes, to prevent interference of a package or envelope, and sometimes just for jewelry. So what did Tamar do to give to Tamar? It's this kind of seal that hung on the cord around his neck and her staff. So he gave her literally his ID card. And that's our story of some ancient identification seals.
That is fascinating how such a subject can illuminate what we read in scripture. We read about seals, and yet we don't get this idea of what's really going on. But what we find in the ground, or much of the time in wet sifting, we are finding these little pieces that just help to illuminate the text. So the story of Judah and Tamar now has become something that we can visualize a little easier. But I think it goes beyond that. It goes beyond just helping us to see this body of evidence that has been put together with seals and seal impressions. It has been useful in many ways. How does this help us to put together a better picture of what is going on in the Bible? How have these artifacts helped us to see the historicity of the Bible?
I think it really helps us to put a person behind the name that we see in the Bible. When we read the story, okay, yeah, it's about this person, but all of a sudden now, here's something that belonged to them. Here's something that they produced themselves. And it really adds this very personal feature to it. And now this person, this Natan, who is the servant of the king, Natan Melech, who's the servant of the king. It's not a name anymore. It's like, wait a minute, here's his seal. Here, he had a document that he needed to authenticate. He needed to do something actually for the king. He was a servant of the king, but he needed to authenticate something. We have his name. We have something that he owned. And I think it really helps to personalize the story or give us these people that are behind the stories.
So
The advent of the wet sifting has helped tremendously with these, because we do find some things just in regular digging, but especially the bullae are the ones that are coming out more and more in wet sifting.
right, and I've seen myself scarabs found in the dirt that were passed on to dry sifting, made it through the dry sifting and went on
And
to
we
wet
found
sifting.
it wet sifting for you.
Right, exactly. So I've seen that, and so this low technology, but
Right.
great,
Garden
and
hose.
yeah,
Right.
it has been so useful, and these seals to show us the characters in the Bible were historical people, because the Bible talks about real people who did
Right. It's
real
real
things.
people. If you ever doubted it, here's more proof. It's real people. Right.
There they are. Right. So many of these seem to come from, say, the time of Jeremiah and Isaiah, Hezekiah, right in that era. Is this why is that we find so many from this one particular era in this one, well, multiple locations, but especially centered around some of the excavations going on in the city of David? Why are we finding these like this?
You're realizing the importance of the city of Jerusalem. Very often we have the idea that this was a little city, it was not very important. This is showing us the importance of Jerusalem as part of the larger picture of the Middle East at that time. How these documents were being sent back and forth to places like over to Babylon or down to Egypt. It is showing us that Jerusalem was really the center of a lot of this activity. And like I said, like you said, they're coming from lots of different places all around the city of David, but they're coming from ancient Jerusalem. This is where so many of these are coming from. But even like at Tel Shiloh, we're finding them there, where there were documents of some sort. They were going back and forth between major cities and major countries at the time. We see a lot of them that were going back and forth to Egypt, because Egypt ruled over that part of the country for a very long time. So it's part of commerce, part of trade, part of the rulership, the leadership from one country to the next there. And
Yeah.
we're finding them, and it's just really neat to see.
Yeah, and I think something you just mentioned, I think is interesting. I think oftentimes when we read the Bible, we have a Sunday school picture of how things went. And when I say that, I'm talking about we have a very one-dimensional image of what was going on. But if you look at some of these seals and these bullae, you see the influences of the nations around. Maybe the nations who had Israel or Judah kind of under their thumb and making them pay tribute. You see Assyrian influences and you see Egyptian influences. These things are included in these seals. How does that help us to get a picture of the world of the Bible?
But we see, I showed you 4 different types of seals that we were finding here. The ones that look like a scarab, this was an influence from Egypt, because they're the ones that use the scarab type seal. We find other ones like the conical seals. This was more from Mesopotamia. So that's influence from out to the east of Israel. Then you find the intaglio seals set into really fancy jewelry, which we saw that intaglio ring from Masada that belonged to a Roman soldier. This is showing us the Roman influence. So it's like Jerusalem is there sort of at the center of a spider web, and we're seeing influences from the east, from the west, from the south. We're Israel was connected internationally in international business trading with all these different places that were around it. And we actually see them in these 4 different types of seals that we find.
Wow, this has been fascinating to me. The little seals with personal names, designs, personal signatures. I mean, that's what we're
Exactly.
looking at. Other than finding, like fingerprints on pottery, this is about as personal as it gets, and you get to work with these small finds in wet sifting. How has that affected your personal view of what you read in scripture?
It shows me a connection back to these people. Shows me a connection because I'm out of a Jewish lineage. It shows my connection through my people back to those people many, many years ago. I actually come out of the lineage of the priestly class, out of the Levites. So it shows me the connection, my own personal connection back to all these historical characters that you read. I go back and I read about Ezra and Nehemiah, or Ezra and Nehemiah, and I read about Ezra and I'm going, wait a minute, he's back in my family line up there. So it's really neat when you see all these stories and you see these objects then that take you back there, and you say, yeah, this is my people. These are the people who are right now fighting for their own existence, against all the surrounding countries over there. To maintain God's promise that this is the land that he gave to the people of Israel. Yeah, it is our land and we're going to hold on to it. That's it. But this
Absolutely.
gives us a personal connection back to all these people from many, many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, the archaeological evidence, the archaeological finds that show us the historicity of the Jewish people, the nations of Israel and Judah, and the continuation that existed, and the different persecutions. This is extremely important, not just to an understanding of history, but to an understanding of our world today.
Yes, it is. Mhm.
So we've been talking with Frankie Snyder about small finds through wet sifting, and specifically about the seals and seal impressions that are found throughout the land of the Bible. Frankie, thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been an absolutely fascinating topic, and thank you for laying it out for us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I've enjoyed doing this. And I hope that your viewers will tune in for some of your other stories that will be equally as interesting.
Well, I hope so. And also, I hope that we can have you back on to talk about some more of the amazing finds that you've made.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. We've been talking with Frankie Snyder. Come back next week for more Biblically Grounded.